got the cornfield calm, Midwest tone, but he's spitting facts like a dog with a bone. Lanky frame, fire-haired, eyes on the case, breaking down the game in the darkest place. Sports scores to murder boards, Hoosier logic cuts like swords. From Friday lights to chalked out lines, this redhead's brain rewrites the lines inside the Hoosier mind, where the stories twist and stats unwind. He's a legend in flannel, mic in hand, digging deep where few can stand. From touchdowns to crime scenes raw, he's got the truth in every draw. Yeah, step in if you dare to find what's brewing inside the Hoosier mind. He'll talk Pacers, Colts, or Colts on trial. Hoosier humor with a devilish smile. He's that redhead sleuth with a box of clues. Takes your headline, breaks the news. With every stat and every scream, he's painting portraits in your stream. Don't blink, he'll tie it tight. From game night wins to murder flight. Inside the Hoosier mind, where the facts hit hard and the lines are blind. He's a ginger ninja, smooth and slick, cracking cases play by play quick. From courtrooms to the hardwood floor, he digs for more than just the score. Tune in and don't rewind, you're deep now inside the Hoosier mind.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome into Inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you by Military Broadcast Radio, helping give veterans a voice, as well as Gunfighter Beard Company. If you want a great beard, if you want great beard care products, and you want to hear right here in the USA from a Marine in South Carolina, check out Gunfighter Beard Co. He's got all sorts of great stuff, all sorts of great products. Really awesome, really chill dude, and he's another veteran, and you can support a locally owned business here in the United States. Well, we are officially entering into summer as it's June 2nd, and we've already had a whole lot of news happen as far as the NFL goes with two major trades. It's now post June 1st, so there's a lot of teams that can make moves, especially with making trades, as now the June cut deadlines can actually allow it to where the salary cap hits aren't as bad as if they didn't. Two of those moves ended up being Myles Garrett getting traded from the traded from the Cleveland Browns to the Los Angeles Rams. And then we also have on top of that, A.J. Brown getting traded to the New England Patriots, both for a pretty decent amount of compensation as far as picks go. Cleveland ended up actually getting a player out of it as far as I had his name, they completely and totally forgot it. In Jared Verse, which is just recently their first round pick just a couple of years ago. And then, of course, in the other half of the episode, I'm going to start my College Football for Dummies series. So if you or your loved one want to know a little bit more about college football or just football in general, because a lot of this will actually apply over to the NFL side, stay tuned. This is going to take us all the way through a majority of the summer. About 2 weeks before college football kicks off, one of the episodes before that is actually going to be a little bit of a preview. I'm going to go over my picks for college football, who I think is going to probably do really well. And we'll still have some stuff in between there, but for the most part, this summer is going to be my College Football for Dummies series. But nonetheless, though, let's get into the biggest part of it as far as the NFL news. And that's Myles Garrett getting traded from the Cleveland Browns to the Los Angeles Rams. So this is something that I was a little bit surprised about, and more so because we heard a lot of this last year, especially in the offseason. We heard that Myles Garrett was really unhappy with Cleveland. He wanted a trade, and he was like demanding a trade. He had already put a post out on social media thanking that the Cleveland Brown fans, thanking the Cleveland Browns organization, and it was essentially he wanted more money, which respectfully so. Cleveland has been an absolute dumpster fire for good majority of the last few years, with the exception of when they drafted Baker. They really seem to be getting into rhythm. Kevin Stefanski was a pretty good coach. They even go into the playoffs. They blow the Steelers out while they're in the playoffs to start with, and it's the first time they had done that in such a long time. And then, unfortunately, Baker gets hurt. He tries to continue to play through the pain. As this happens, his performance goes down extremely badly. And because of all the restlessness in Cleveland, there's a lot of scarcity. There's a lot of job fearing as far as keeping their jobs, as far as job security goes. So with that, they decided, you know what, we're going to move on from Baker. We're going to find somebody else. And then, of course, they make the massive trade for Deshaun Watson, which, looking at it post, not exactly the the best thing to do. And of course, there's still a quarterback controversy as it stands right now, because they're a little bit torn right now between if Deshaun Watson should be quarterback one because they're paying him all this money, or if Shedeur Sanders should be quarterback one because of how he ended up playing at the very end of the season in the second half. And it is a little bit worth a note that poor Dylan Gabriel is just not even getting any type of no recognition. There's no mention of his name. I'm not saying Dylan Gabriel's going to light up the NFL. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just a little crazy that their third round guy, Dylan Gabriel, who had a lot of experience in college, I think did well for the situation that is Cleveland. A couple Browns fans in the comments on YouTube saying Watson sucks. I don't necessarily disagree. When you look at how he's been really with Cleveland, not just even from the injury history perspective, but just his overall statistics and what little bit we have gotten from him, it's nowhere near his Pro Bowl years when he was with Houston and prior to all of the, massage scandal and whatnot. So, and of course, they drafted Taylon Green out of Arkansas last year, which I really liked Taylon Green watching him. I thought he was great. It was one of those, before I really knew who he was and I watched him, I was hoping, man, I hope this kid is able to stay at least one more year and able to continue to keep going and able to play at least one more season in college football. And unfortunately, that ended up not being the case. Shirko, appreciate you tuning in. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Myles Garrett trade over into the Rams. And let's see. Erwin Curtis said last time Watson played, he looked so tentative and even scared. I agree. He's definitely got that quarterback kind of jumpiness of once you get hurt and you have that major injury, they're so hesitant and they're either super paranoid and they just throw the ball away or they get it out super fast to like a little short check down. They don't really do much with it. That was one of the things I was really disappointed about with Carson Wentz coming back from injury. It was like he's a completely different quarterback from what he was, and it's a shame because when all the way up until he got hurt that season, the Eagles went and won the Super Bowl, he looked absolutely fantastic. He was an absolute MVP candidate. Irwin's also not a fan of Shedeur Sanders, and he's a UFL quarterback at best. We'll see. I think truly for Shedeur, it's one of those situations where he's with Cleveland. Their wide receiver room sucks tremendously bad. Now they drafted a couple of guys as far as Casey Concepcion. They do have Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy really hasn't lived up to his potential. I think Casey Concepcion might be able to add a little bit of life, a little bit of depth. And again, if anything, he's also a really good returner to that offense. But yeah, their wide receiver room, between wide receiver and quarterback, the Cleveland Browns are just an absolute mess right now. I appreciate that, Shirko. I appreciate that. But nonetheless, though, they trade Myles Garrett, which is really one of their star package players on defense, which I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised at. I think he's 30. He's either 30 or 31, or he's going to turn 31. He just broke the NFL sack record last season, paying him a ton of money. And he's at that point where they felt that they needed to trade him if they're going to get rid of him and if they're going to get any type of a return on their investment. They ended up getting a first-round pick. I believe they get a second-round pick the following year, and then they get a third-round pick the year following that as well, on top of Jared First, who's a first-round pick by the Rams in 2024. So they'll be able to keep him for at least 3 years. How about the World Cup, and it's coming to the States? Any thoughts? I think it's cool. I think especially, and people can correct me if I'm wrong if you're a bigger soccer fan than I am, because I'll be 100% honest. I have tried to watch soccer. I've gotten into it a couple times, but just not as deeply as everybody else does. I think it's cool that it's coming here to the States. I think it's cool that the U.S. seems to have finally kind of gotten on the bandwagon, and I don't even want to say bandwagon, but really gotten on board with embracing soccer as a whole and embracing the really cool traditions. Now that we see everything publicized a lot more, we can see how passionate soccer fans are, and that's really translated well over here to the US, mixing with our fandom of what we have as far as, the tailgating experience that you get from college and the professional leagues, and then you can add that with the other cultures and what they have and how they do things over on the other side, as far as some of the chants, some of the cheers, and just the overall energy. I think it's cool that they're doing it. The Browns are the Titanic, and Art Modell was the iceberg that hit. The franchise has been sinking ever since. It really has. It's been so bad for the Browns for so long. Um, but the biggest question though now is, what do the Browns do with those picks that they do have? It's one of those. It's great when you can get a huge draft capital, but those draft picks don't mean anything if you can't pick the right player. And it's one of those, you don't know that you have the right player until they're on the field and until they make some type of an impact. And to me, that's really where the Browns sit right now. So to me, the Browns, I think, got a little bit of a better deal because they can end up getting younger. They can really build around the team. Now, the biggest issue that they've had for almost 30 years now, ever since Bernie Kosar retired, is who is the quarterback of the future? I think the list is like 32, 33, maybe even like 35 names deep on their list of their starting quarterbacks at some point. Former Heisman winners, former number 1 overall picks, former number 2 overall picks. They've had so much depth, so many good players coming out of college, even guys that managed to go to other teams and really resurrect their careers, i.e. Baker Mayfield ended up doing pretty well. Now, some of them, I think it was just so bad, and some of these guys really never got another shot to really prove themselves, i.e. Brady Quinn. I wasn't a huge fan of Brandon Weeden. I thought he was a little bit too old to be able to play quarterback, especially when they drafted him, and they drafted him with a first round pick. I thought that was a little crazy, but again, to each their own. They drafted DeShone Kizer at one point. That ended up not working out super well. So for a lot of these guys, I think for them coming into this, they're not set up with a good support system. Cleveland itself is already super dysfunctional. It's not a big free agency destination. Now, it was for a little bit there when they had a little bit of that juice and momentum with Baker, with OBJ, with Jarvis Landry, with all of that. But it really is just, it's one of those, it's hard to kind of sell Cleveland as a positive thing. 40 plus quarterbacks have played at least one game for the Browns since they came back. 40. That is nuts. That is, and you have to think about that. You came back in like the late 90s, and then with that, you have 40 quarterbacks that have rotated through, and you can't find one that sticks. Sure, that's a nice trait of info. I don't watch any American football. I only know a few players and teams. You seem like me. I would say so. I'll be 100% honest. I'm one of those when it comes to soccer. I know like Messi. I know Ronaldo. That's usually about it. I know soccer has so many different leagues. I actually have a buddy that I work with named Mike. He's a fan of Manchester United. I think we actually have another coworker that's also a fan of Manchester United. They're like huge into it. I didn't know soccer had so many leagues, and I would say for you probably looking at like American football, it's the same, because here in America, the two biggest are the NFL and then collegiate football. Depending on what state you are, high school football can be just as equally important. And then also depending on some states, if they don't have a big professional team, or if they don't even have a big collegiate team either for college, some of them may even be big UFL or the United Football League fans, which it's kind of like a step down. Like if you look at it from a tier perspective, like the NFL is 1, college is 2, and then the UFL would be like 3. And most people, they don't even look at like 3. 3 is like a gap, probably this much of a difference of nobody just wants to watch that at all. Not saying it's not good. I mean, I've watched a little bit of UFL and it's been decent, but it's nothing too crazy. But let's look on the other side with the LA Rams, though, getting Myles Garrett. This feels really reminiscent of when they went all in, when they traded Jared Goff for Matt Stafford. They get him. They have OBJ. They have Cooper Kupp. They have a really young, good defense, and led by Aaron Donald. And they went and won the Super Bowl and pretty much traded everything away to go all in for that 1 year. And then they're like, yeah, we'll deal with the consequences down the road. That's really what it feels like right now. They still have Stafford, who was an MVP season last year. They have Devontae Adams, who's coming to the end of his career, but was still solid. He led the league last year in touchdown catches. Then you also have Puka Nacua, very young, coming into his own. Running back room is kind of a running back room by committee, but still pretty solid. And then now you have Myles Garrett on a still very young, very solid defense and very good corners. How about the XFL? So the XFL actually merged. They merged with another spring football league at the same time called the USFL, or the United Spring Football League. They merged and ended up becoming the UFL. And a lot of that was mainly due to pricing and just the overall existence of the leagues. When they looked at both, because both had 8 teams in them, and financially, a lot of these guys don't get paid a lot of money. I think collectively the 10 games that they played, I heard numbers anywhere from like 10 to maybe 50 grand total for their payment. So for them, as far as helping with survival, helping keep things a little bit more interesting, condense some of the teams, and again, try to get better talent and better overall play and just better product, they merged together to become the UFL. Some of those XFL teams ended up staying. Same with the USFL. Some of those teams stayed. And then just this past season, there was a few of them. They've moved. San Antonio no longer has a team. Houston still does. Orlando, Florida ended up getting a team. Louisville ended up getting a team. Columbus got a team. And I feel like I'm forgetting one more, but there was like 3 or 4 new teams that moved because Michigan lost theirs. I think Pittsburgh lost theirs. San Antonio lost theirs, and I am missing one more. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, the XFL ended up merging into the UFL with the USFL. But with the Rams right now, I think the Rams are at this point where you have one of the best defensive players in the league. You have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You have, arguably 2 of the better wide receivers in the league, and it's really Super Bowl or bust. Last year, they were extremely close. They were right in the NFC Championship. They were just a play away from being able to make the difference to represent the NFC in that game if they, didn't have to face their rival in Seattle. So for me, it's a quick win for Los Angeles, but I do have to wonder, what does Los Angeles look like going forward in the future? Because they're going all in on a lot of these old guys that I don't think Myles Garrett will necessarily retire, but I think this is Stafford's last year. And I think if he can go out, he's already won a Super Bowl. If he can win a second one, that puts him ahead of a lot of people in a lot of statistical categories, puts him ahead as far as the Hall of Fame argument later on in the future. You've got Devontae probably going to follow suit. He hasn't won a Super Bowl. He hasn't even been to a Super Bowl yet. So for him, that would probably be a good way to finish his career. Again, I don't think Garrett would, but you never know. The option might be there. I know Aaron Donald even teased the idea of it, of, being able to ride off into the sunset of having a Super Bowl win. And that's how you play your last game, is a win on the biggest stage. But I do wonder how the Rams look at that going forward, because their cap is going to be an absolute mess as far as having to pay all these guys, all the money that they've had to dish out. They don't have draft picks. Well, they don't have first-round talent draft picks. They'll still have draft picks. They'll still be able to rebuild the team, but there's going to be a lot of questions as to how good does that look going into the future. Especially that American football is a dangerous sport with all you get from CTE and other stuff. Money would be a reason. Yeah, and that's the thing. Right before COVID, the XFL actually picked up pretty well on that, and I don't know if that's maybe when you saw it. The XFL actually picked up a lot of momentum just because of a few of us that were old enough to remember the original XFL when it came out. It was kind of a clown show. It was a mess. It was rebranded. It was actually done really, really well. They had all these big TV contracts. The pandemic happened, unfortunately, and then all that ended up going away. It got brought back again. But it does just seem as though this year, at least to me personally, they didn't do as much advertising for it this year as they have in years past, but this year was also a big change. Come to find out, they didn't end up holding their end of the deal. The U.S. Army actually sponsored them, gave them a bunch of money to try to hopefully get a lot of advertisement. I guess some of the contractual agreements for advertising on that wasn't met by Dwayne The Rock Johnson. So they ended up pulling that back, taking some of that money back. They ended up switching their uniform deal with Under Armour to, I believe it's Adidas/New Era. So that was also kind of a weird situation with that, but nonetheless, though, yeah, it's kind of been hard for them. Now they have been picking up speed. This is, I think, their third year of being in, as well as you've been able to have a lot of guys go from the UFL over into the NFL, which has been kind of a help for them. The UFL has The Rock at the helm, yawn, or as I call him, the Pebble. It is weird how many things he has how many things that he's involved with as far as like his tequila, the roast, the movies, the fact that he's an owner in the UFL and whatnot it's crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. But I do wonder with the Rams, though, back to them, of they drafted Ty Simpson this year with their first pick. I believe he was 13th overall. And I heard somebody say that they're trying to get a jump ahead of the future of in next year's class when it's supposed to be a deeper quarterback draft. It's supposed to be, a better overall class, and looking at it, at least at the current moment, because we thought this year's class was going to be really good last year, and all of them ended up falling short, unfortunately, with the exception of Fernando. And I don't even think Fernando was considered one of the top guys. It was just one of those, like, he ended up being it because the rest of the class, really fell short as far as Cade Klubnik, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier, my guy from LSU, ended up not having a very good season, not only on top of injury, but just his overall performance. Dante Moore was still solid, but there's a lot of questions of whether or not he would even come out in this draft. And then, there's a lot of rumors, maybe Arch comes out. I don't think Arch was going to come out, but, I think a lot of people are hopeful. It does lead to the big question with them of, Ty Simpson is there. You have a very small sample size of what he looked like at Alabama for one season. And I'm not saying he did bad, but it's one of those, I did not look at him as a first round pick. I looked at him about a second or a third. And do they think he can be the guy? Maybe because it's Sean McVay. But even then, how many years, especially after they won that last Super Bowl, have we heard rumors that, Sean McVay wants to retire? Does he potentially do the same thing? I don't think that's the case. I think maybe he kind of fell in love with the game again, but that's yet to be seen. Why doesn't the UFL just become the G League for the NFL? Sounds like a good idea to get money. That's been a question for a really long time of why doesn't the UFL just become a G League for the NFL? And a lot of that, the NFL has to sign off on it. And for whatever reason, and this is the really weird part about the NFL, is the NFL has to sign off on that, but the NFL doesn't want competition. And I think the only reason they don't is because when you look at how good, and again, I don't know if you follow college football. College football has such a big following. And if you look at a lot of the TV ratings, a lot of the episode ratings for some of the most watched things, especially here in the United States, college football is like number 2 right behind the NFL. Now, the NFL dominates in those numbers, but college football is very, very close behind. And so when you look at some of these bigger schools, schools that were really popular for a really long time as far as churning out and producing NFL talent, Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon, LSU, Florida, Georgia. When you look at a lot of those teams, the draw that they get and then the talent that comes from them, a lot of these colleges are treated more kind of like that G League than the UFL would. Again, mostly because for many, many years with Nick Saban as the head coach, Alabama was turning out first round, top quality NFL players at every single position, every single year, for a really long time. And it hasn't been the case as much, I would say, within the last probably 4 or 5 years. If you wanted really good offensive linemen, you usually went to Alabama, you usually went to Iowa, Wisconsin, or Florida. sometimes Georgia. If you wanted really good defensive players, you went to Georgia, you went to Alabama. Wide receivers, you went to Ohio State, you went to LSU, Alabama. Some would argue USC. That was a little bit more of a, I would say, older USC time, not as much within the last 20-ish years or so. There's been a couple here or there, but just not nearly as much. So it was like every single position you could kind of go to a school and get a quality player just because of that school's history, who they've been able to produce, who they've been able to mold and work with. So really college is kind of more of the NFL's quote unquote G League than the UFL would be. Now, I think it would be a good idea for the NFL to support it. I don't know if you've ever seen my show before. If not, a few episodes ago, one of the guys that comes on this pretty frequently, Mike, he and I talked about that of for the NFL, and if timeline wise it could work, for some of these guys that maybe don't get drafted, have the NFL say, hey, go into the UFL for a little bit, come in, kind of see how things work, go into a new system, go around new players and just see how well you do. It's another set of reps. It's another set of film. It's more experience. It's experience with previous NFL coaches, previous NFL players, just to kind of see what would happen with it. And the cool part is it's after the NFL season is over. That's what I also think is weird, is they don't want the competition, even though the UFL is during the NFL's entire offseason aside from the draft. Like, that's why I don't understand why they wouldn't make it a G League, but that's from me. Oh, you're from Bahrain. Okay. And you only watch the NBA, and I know how big college sports is, but you are saying college football is more popular than the NBA. Yeah, I would argue it. And a lot of that is due to, I'm not really sure why the NBA isn't as popular as it used to be. I do kind of wonder, for a lot of it, at least here in the States, and you watch a lot of the NBA, so you can give me your thoughts on it. It's kind of like that passing of the torch thing. So the NBA was really struggling during the 70s and the 80s between Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, the Lakers, the Celtics. They were kind of able to help bring that back a little bit, bring the NBA back into a lot of prominence. They kept that for a long time. Then you had the kid going to Chicago by the name of Michael Jordan. He keeps it really interesting just because of his style of play, his attitude, his mentality. That kept it really interesting. And then that torch was kind of passed to Kobe Bryant. A lot of people would also probably argue is then passed to LeBron. I would say Kobe, then LeBron. And LeBron dominated for a long time. And then now it seems more, you don't have as many specific players being able to dominate and carry a team like you used to. Now it truly is more of a team collective whole than what it used to be, of like LeBron James solely carried the Cavaliers to those, 4 straight finals or 6 straight finals or however many finals he went to with the Cavs to compete for a championship. But then you had the Warriors dynasty that was really in the way of that, between Steph Curry, Clay, KD, Andre Iguodala. And so now when you look at it, you have big stars like Giannis, but he's not the only major factor on the Bucks anymore, and he can't carry the Bucks to, the Eastern Conference Finals. If you look at even look at the finals, since they're starting tomorrow, you look at the Spurs, like, yeah, Wemby is the main star, but you have all of that Spurs supporting cast that does so well and has played such a vital role. You could even argue the same thing for OKC. SGA probably had a really good game as far as the game 7 goes, but Chet, I think Chet had like 2 shots that he tried to get. He only ended up getting 1. I think he had ended up with 5 points to finish the game, so he wasn't able to make that big of an impact. And so to me, I feel while you have star talent, it's definitely become more of a team collective rather than just one guy being that superstar that can truly carry the team. And exactly, it's like every year, big players, go team to team to chase a ring, and it does. And I argued it for a long time. That was kind of LeBron. It was like he had to form a super team, which retroactively looking at it, he did kind of have to when it comes to, facing a team like the Warriors. But yeah, I mean, that's realistically what a lot of these teams have started to do. Look at, I would probably argue the Nuggets would be the only other team that they have such a star player in Nikola Jokic who really could carry them to a Western Conference Finals. But I think for anybody who really watches the NBA and watches Nikola Jokic, he just doesn't care enough. Like I think for him, he's got his ring. I think he's content with that. I think he's happy. Anything else after that is just kind of a bonus. And it's like, okay, cool. I want another ring. If not, I want to go back to, take care of my horses, taking care of my farm. I really don't want to do basketball. So that's kind of my thought on the NBA, how they kind of roll things and do things there. But that's just me personally, at least. So yeah, it is interesting, and it's interesting to see, a league like the NBA that isn't as popular as some college sports, because it is. I mean, college football is bigger. I don't know about the college basketball. I know in March, college basketball is really good. I think for the other thing that really hurts the NBA is when they get started. Because if I remember correctly, the NBA season starts in like November, December. So you're at the end of college football, the regular season, but then you're getting into the college football playoffs, which again, it's still football. It's still the number 2 sport. So they're absolutely rolling. You got the NFL that's coming to an end. And so a lot of more of these games matter because, okay, these few games can be the difference of our team getting into the playoffs or not. But that's when the NBA starts, is right during that time. I think if they pushed the NBA to starting, I would say start just after the Super Bowl. I would say start after the Super Bowl. I would cut the number of games too. I think the NBA has 70, 80 games. To me, that's too much. It's too much. There's too many opportunities for, oh yeah, we can drop, 15, 20 games in a row. And it doesn't really matter because we can still compete in the West, or heck, if you're in the East, you can continue to just roll and maybe even make it up all the way up to the 1 seed, depending on how hard you continue to play. So to me, I would say move the season, cut the number of games, and really just take advantage of there not being any football. I think if you did that from February to heck, you could go all the way up to August when football really starts. You could really go. You could really go. Julio Jones. How would you compare Julio Jones to an NBA player? Because Julio was really dominant for the timeline that he was in, and Julio kind of it kind of sucks because when you look at Julio Jones, he had to share the spotlight with a few really big star players. When Julio was playing, you had players like Des Bryant, you had players like Calvin Johnson, you had Michael Thomas, even though some people are not a fan of Michael Thomas. Not a wide receiver, but you had guys like Rob Gronkowski at the time. You had Tom Brady. So if I had to compare Julio to an NBA player, trying to think of somebody that was really good, but never managed to win a championship. I don't even know if I could make. I guess if I really wanted to compare him to somebody, I would say maybe Giannis. You look at how much Giannis has done for the city of Milwaukee, has really brought Milwaukee up. He's been one of the few bright spots for Milwaukee for a really long time. Now he did end up finally winning a ring. But then ever since then, it's like, yeah, he's just kind of gone downhill, but he's been a statistical dominating person and dominating player for a long time. That was really Julio. Like Julio was a bright spot for the Falcons. He did really well for an extremely long time. They're in Atlanta now. Unfortunately, they ended up releasing him. He went to Philadelphia. He went to Tampa. I think he went to one other team. I think it was like 3 other teams he ended up going to. before he finally ended up calling it quits. And it was unfortunate because by that time, his career was long since over. He just tried to keep it going. So I think that would be a decent comparison. Some people might argue that, but I feel like if I really wanted to make a good comparison as far as a big dominant body that was really well at playing a sport, I would say him. Or you could even you could maybe even say Dame Lillard, because Dame Lillard is one of he also hasn't won a ring yet. So I mean that to me, I would probably say a lot of players on the field I wouldn't know who is who except the receiver. And that's fair. And I would argue truly, even a lot of diehard fans wouldn't know. They probably wouldn't know a lot of their offense or their defense, with the exception of maybe like a few star guys that are highlighted if they're like first round picks, or if there's a lot of like highlight and publicity, or if they're a quarterback or wide receiver, even a running back. Those are kind of your money making positions. Depending on your tight end, unless you're really good, probably not going to be known as much. But like your offensive line, not a lot of people know their offensive line. Same with their defensive lines. Same with their safeties and their corners. They might know a couple linebackers, maybe a couple defensive line guys, but no, believe me, there's a whole lot of even fans who love the game that don't know it. Like I am personally just a football nerd who loves to watch it personally. But we'll move into the second part of the episode as far as college football for dummies. So part of why I wanted to make this was I feel like there are people who, even like yourself, Shirko, if you want to learn more about college football, if you just want to learn more about football as a whole, whether you have a partner, family, friends, whoever who, maybe you're sitting there and you're like, I want to impress this person, or, I want to not be sitting there like confused at a family get together, or, a get together with friends, and know what in the world they're talking about, what in the world they're saying when it comes to football and college football as a whole. So that's part of why I wanted to make this series. So the first thing I'm going to start with is the offense for episode number 1 of College Football for Dummies. So with college football, and even the professional football as well, there are 11 players that go onto the field. You have a quarterback, a running back, maybe even 2, but we'll dive a little bit deeper into that. You can have wide receivers, you can have a tight end, you can have 5 offensive linemen, sometimes even up to 7. And that's your offense. Now, the quarterback is the person who throws the ball. Running back runs the ball. Wide receivers typically catch the ball. Now, they can run. They can also help block. Tight ends, same thing. They can catch the ball or they can help block. And then you have on the offensive line, you have typically 5 players. The 2 guys on the very outside of the offensive line, those are your offensive tackles. Pretty much the biggest thing, your edge rushers are going to come around. Your offensive tackle's biggest job is to stop them, or at least delay them, so your quarterback can either get the ball out, or your running back can get the ball, open up lanes or holes, or basically open areas for them to be able to run through to create what they call space or separation, so that they can run the ball to gain yardage and gain first downs, which I'll go into here in a second. Now, those are the 2 guys on the outside. There's 2 more guys in the middle. Those are called your guards. They essentially do a lot of the same thing. They're supposed to help take care of the defensive guys on the other side of the ball that are trying to come get to you. But they do more of it on the inside. Now, guards and tackles do things really similarly, but not technically the same. Then the very guy in the middle, or the quote unquote center, is his title. He's the one who snaps the ball. So he will give the ball to the quarterback, whether it's be throwing it or literally handing it back to him. He can do a few different things. He can make what they call an adjustment on the play. So he can call out guys if he thinks there's going to be a blitz, if he thinks this person is doing something weird or shady. He can help the quarterback. He can help the offensive line as far as adjustments go, as far as, hey, I want you to block him. I want you to do this. He can make those adjustments, and he helps get the ball out. Really, really intricate part of the player. And so for the other unknown players, less money, less fame, but you got your build, eat strong. Pretty much. I mean, yeah, you don't get as much fame. Now, you can get a lot of money. You can get a whole lot of money on the offensive line, especially if you're good. But yeah, pretty much you just get to be the big, strong dude that, You just got to show up, and if you could block people, you're solid. Um, Share a screen of the scoreboard. I don't have a screen of the scoreboard, unfortunately. I will work on that though. But exactly, the center is the one who hikes the ball to the quarterback. That's usually the command of execution that the quarterback will yell is hike. The ball gets tossed back to them. So here's the other thing with football. So you on offense, you have 4 attempts on what they call you have 4 attempts to try to get the ball over a line. Now, the line is typically 10 yards away from where they stop the ball at. Okay. A football field total is a little over 100 yards from end zone to end zone. If I remember correctly, it's like 130 yards total from end zone to end zone. And so the ball will get kicked off. That's literally the name of the start of it. They kick it off. The team receives it. They will either try to run it out. So basically, the person catches it. They try to run to get it to as far as they could. You can even score if you're able to take it from end zone to end zone. It's what they call a touchdown. You can do that. Or if you do what they call a fair catch. So basically, they catch the ball. They'll take a knee. Then the ball is spotted out all the way from either the 20 all the way up to potentially the 30 to 35, depending on if there's what they call a penalty or some type of illegal play or some illegal action done. It could be moved. So once you're there, at wherever you're at, so for ease of everything, let's say you're at the 25-yard line, okay? And on a football field, you'll notice it goes 50, then it goes, you have 2 40s, then 2 30s, 2 20s, and then 2 10s. Both correct on the I don't want to say this because it flips and then it gets really weird. Typically, if you're a team and let's say you do what they call a fair catch, you're going to start on your own team's 25. And then once you get past the 50-yard line, now you're into the other team's 25, 35, 40-yard line. Okay. And so once you're there, typically you have 10 yards to try to move the ball to continue on playing. And you have 4 attempts to be able to do that. The first down, the second down, the third down, and the fourth down. Okay. So usually what you'll see is you'll hear it's 1st and 10. Let's say they do a little run play. They get 4 yards. Now it's 2nd and 6 because you still have 6 yards to go in order to get a first down, which basically resets everything. You move farther, but you get another 10 yards to try to be able to make a play and be able to score. So you continue to do that all the way until you either score or usually they'll say if it's 3rd down. Okay, and if it's 3rd and 10 or anything more than 10, they call it 3rd and long, right? And so after 3rd and long, if they don't get it, if say they have what's called an incomplete pass, so they throw the ball, they don't catch it, that's an incomplete pass. Or if the running back runs, they doesn't go anywhere, or he gets short yardage, or it says he's short, then it goes into 4th down. A lot recently, they do what they like to call go for it. So they still try to throw or run it to get the first down. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If they do, you continue on. Or if it's too bad or if it's too big of a 4th down, so say it's like 4th and 15, they'll do what they call punt it, which is where they have a whole new group of players, which I'll get into in a later episode. They hike the ball and then they kick it to the other team and they try to kick it as far back as they can. Now you have to be careful when it goes into the end zone because then that's what's called a touchback, and it's kind of similar to a fair catch, and so the ball moves up to the 25. One of the reasons it makes it a little harder to understand is that y'all use yards and we use meters. What is the good length to go to other than touchdown so it could be a good attack? That is a good question. So I would say this for us. So 1 yard is equivalent to 3 feet or basically 1 meter, if that kind of help. Or yeah, 1 yard. 1 yard is 3 feet. You're gonna make me Google How far is it? How long is 1 meter? How long is 1 meter in feet? Okay, so a meter is about 3 feet. So and 1 yard is about 3 feet. So if that kind of helps, um, oops, 1 yard in feet. Yeah, 1 yard is 3. So if that helps, if you want to change it to meters to maybe make it a little bit understandable, that can also help. So if I don't reach 10 yards, we reset to the start of the normal play. So let's say you don't get to 10 yards. Let's say you were on your 4th down and there's 3 yards to go or 3 meters to go. You have 2 choices. You can either what they call punt the ball. So that's when they hike it and you see the guy, he like kicks it and he brings his leg up super high and then it goes to the other team. Depending on how big your 4th down is, you can punt it and do it that way. Or a lot of the statistics, and you'll probably hear this from the color commentators, you'll probably hear this from a lot of referees or betting guys. Anything less than 4th and 5, they will probably do what they call go for it. So basically it's one more shot. Think of it kind of like sudden death, right? So it's 4th and 5, and this next play absolutely has to work. You have to get those 5 yards or those 5 meters to be able to get a new first down to basically reset to the start of a normal play, if that makes sense. So as you continue to do that, and then once you get into the other teams within the 20-yard line, that's what they call the red zone. Why they call it red zone, I have no idea. But they call that the red zone because basically you're 20 yards or 20 meters from the end zone to be able to score what they call a touchdown. Okay. Now, same thing. You really don't treat anything differently as far as how you move the ball. The 1st and 10, the 2nd and 3, whatever the mark is, or what they call the mark where the ball is at, in relation to the field, that doesn't change. Okay. Now, once you get into 10 yards or 10 meters from the end zone, now that's what they call 1st and goal because you're within the goal line, you're within scoring range. Okay. And same thing. So you can go all the way up to 4th and goal. And when you get to 4th and goal, you have one of 2 options. You can either kick what they call a field goal. And Shirko, you've probably heard this as far as the NBA. Field goal is typically 3 points. It's the same for the NFL and college. Now, the UFL does things a little bit differently. I don't want to make that super confusing. But for college and for NFL, you can kick what's called a field goal, and that's 3 points. Okay. Now, at any point during the game, whether you're close to the end zone or whether you're and technically you could even do this from the other end of the field if you're able to have a successful play. If at any point, if your team has the ball and it is able to cross the other end zone, okay, there's a little white line just before the end zone. If the tip of the ball, that little corner part of that weird oblong oval shape, crosses that white line, that's considered a touchdown, and that's worth 6 points. Now, a lot of times, if you look on the scoreboard, they'll score a touchdown, they'll give them 6, and then they have what they called a point after touchdown, or the PAT. That's just basically a free kick. If you make that kick, that's 1 point. Or you'll sometimes hear people say you need to go for a 2-point conversion. Now, a 2-point conversion is you run kind of the same thing like a 4th down play. It's a sudden death play. You're at the end zone, and you have one shot. You have one play to be able to make it work. And if, again, you can get the ball to cross that white line, that's 2 points. So you have an opportunity to score anywhere from 3 all the way up to 8 points to have a quote-unquote successful, what they call a drive, which is you starting with the ball, taking it down the field, and ending it in the end zone. Joel, I like the new overlay. Glad you're on. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's one of those, I was kind of playing around with it. I was like, I want something a little bit different. want something a little cleaner, not as cluttered. I was like, ooh, let me just play around with overlay. I used to play with overlays all the time. Let me try it again one more time. But yeah, that is essentially at least the offensive side of the ball. I am probably forgetting a whole lot. I feel like I'm not, but I'm probably forgetting a whole lot. Just in case, we'll cover a couple other basics. So I will say on a drive, or again, when you first get the ball and then you're moving it down the field, you have two options. You can run the ball, and just about anybody can run the ball. The quarterback can run the ball. Most quarterbacks are typically not that fast. They are now. It's definitely a new age of athletics. So guys like Lamar Jackson is really famous here recently for being a really good ball runner. Same with Josh Allen. I'm trying to think of another really good ball running quarterback. Caleb Williams is actually a really good scrambler whenever he wants to be. Some people might say Jalen Hurts because he just falls forward and gets yardage. Super annoying. Not going to dive into that. So he can run the ball or he can throw the ball. Running backs, typically the same thing. Now, the running back can throw, but again, that's getting really deep into specifics. This is just more for like fun knowledge. There used to be a play, what they called a wildcat formation. Why again is called wildcat? I don't know. But basically, the running back is standing in the quarterback position. The quarterback is typically still on the field, but he's acting like he's a wide receiver, like he's going to catch the ball. Sometimes he does, if he's in that position. The running back snaps it, and then the running back can throw it. They can throw it forward. So they can run the ball, they can throw the ball. Wide receivers, they can basically do the same thing. There's a lot of what they call trick plays where like a running back or wide receiver may throw the ball, and instead of them doing their normal thing of running it or catching it, the quarterback can then catch it or run it at that point, either one. There's that. I will say too, kind of a fun fact, and it doesn't happen very often. So one of the things that you'll probably see and hear when it comes to some what they call turnovers, or basically you lose the ball to the other team. So anything from the other team catches the ball, which is an interception, or if you have the ball or your team has the ball, and then after you catch it and you move forward and you lose the ball, like somebody punches it out, it slips out because it's wet, whatever the case may be, that's called a fumble. And so if the other team gets the ball and picks it up, you basically lose the ball, and then they can potentially either run and score with it, or then it's their turn on offense and then they go forward with it. Let's see. There's that. Let's see. Throw the ball, run the ball. I was like, I couldn't even remember where I was going with that thought. Once the ball is thrown forward, another player can't throw it forward again. Okay. So like if I'm a quarterback and I throw it forward to a wide receiver, that wide receiver can't then take it and then throw it forward to another person. They can't do that. Basically it gets thrown forward once, and then you catch it, and then you just have to run from that point forward. Now, the ball can still move to somebody else. It just has to go laterally, so to your left or to your right. So if you're running and there's a guy like coming up behind you, kind of like in a relay race, and you pass the ball or pass the baton to him and he speeds past you while you do a block, you can do that. Or what you may see, they call it a flea flicker. So one guy has the ball, then he tosses it back and then throws it forward. It can go back and it can go side to side. It can only go forward once. Even if somebody like tips the ball, like you throw it forward, they tip it back, and then you try to forward again. That's what they call an illegal double pass. You can't do that. How many passes are allowed? So throughout a game, as many as you want. Again, you're only allowed on like each play, you're only allowed to throw the ball forward. You're only allowed to pass or throw the ball forward once. But throughout a game, you can have as many passes as you want. I think one quarterback, I don't remember the team, he tried to throw the ball 66 times in one particular game, which is a lot. And between both quarterbacks, you may potentially have something like that if it's kind of a high scoring, what they call a shootout. So if, each team is just scoring touchdowns or, scoring constantly, you may be throwing the ball a whole lot more to try to basically play catch up and, score to the side, to my left, or correct. So, yeah, you can go left or right to the side with the ball as far as, giving it to somebody else, but you can only throw forward once. But yeah, I mean, you can throw the ball as little or as much as you want, or you can run the ball as little or as much as you want. Some teams, they rely a lot more on passing. And so defensively, they just have to be prepared for that to basically try to stop somebody from catching it. Or some of them are better at running the ball than they are throwing it. So that's also a potential thing. So yeah, that's at least some of the offense kind of in a nutshell. This is one of those I'm kind of trying to think about a lot of this on the fly, and I don't want to give too much because I got to make 10 episodes of this. But I also want to make sure I'm covering everything. And again, it is a little confusing, and I know I'm sorry I don't have visual aids to kind of help with this. And once you see it, it kind of makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, that'll probably be episode 1 for College Football for Dummies. Next week, I'm going to do episode 2. I'm probably going to focus more on the defense for the second episode and whatnot. So if you're interested, if you like this, please let me know. Please let me know what you think I could do better, what you think I could do different. If anybody you think needs to watch and hear this, please let me know. I'm going to put this on Spotify here shortly. So if you want to catch this again, you can. It'll also be on my YouTube channel. It'll be on my Facebook, everywhere inside the Hoosier Mind. I'm going to put it up so that way people can see it. I'm going to try to make this also a 60-second thing. I don't know if I'll be able to, but I'm going to absolutely try for TikTok if seeing it that way makes it a little bit easier for everybody. So if you like this, please check me out at Inside the Hoosier Mind. Also, please check out militarbroadcastradio.us. They have a slew of other great military veteran hosts, other veteran podcasters, not even just sports. If you want stuff to help you with your life, if you want stuff to help you as far as your money, your budget, just any type of positivity, if you just want to hear cool stories about people, people who, just like you, they're not super famous celebrities, but they've managed to start their business. They've managed to, kind of build their life up from potentially nothing and become really successful. A whole slew of really great hosts here on Military Broadcast Radio. And it helps give veterans voices. It helps them tremendously. And then again, if you want a really great beard stuff, if you want to smell good, if you want to help out another veteran with stuff made right here in the U.S., really great product stuff, go check out Gunfighter Beard Co. He's a Marine out of South Carolina. I love his products. They smell good. They last a really long time. All the stuff is natural. It's good for your skin. It's good for your beard. You can help the ladies. You can help pretty much everything. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Sheerco, I definitely appreciate it. Appreciate the conversation the whole entire time. That helps a lot. It helps it just not me, me talking to myself. And appreciate everybody else that tuned in and watched. I appreciate everybody. Love everybody that did it. But I hope everybody has a good night. I will see y'all next week as we continue on through the summer and the off season, and we will see y'all later.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.